trying to figure out my audio setup here. The music does not seem to be wanting to come through. Should have done this before I started the stream, but can't seem to create an audio output, which is not good. Maybe we just won't have music this time, since I can't seem to figure out how to make it work. All right, well, no idea. I do need to figure out real quick. My music seems to not, or my bot seems to not be working correctly either. The joys of streaming. All right, CloudBot. Pretty sure this will allow that to update now. Should be able to post into chat. Cool. Yeah, there we go. Pretzel. Nope. All right. Didn't work apparently. All right. Well, we'll just go ahead and not play music, so that we're not spamming chat either, and I'll figure that out next time. Cool. So, thought today I would take some time to work on my personal site a little bit. I have started building this in Eleventy, which is right here. Let me go ahead and pull up a browser. Open tmux. Oh, apparently my tmux config is broken. This is a good stream. Okay, we'll just use cool. Go ahead and get that in there. Managed to minimize my stream. We are rocking it today, clearly. All right. So if we go ahead and yarn start. And cool. So then we go to localhost 8080. This is what I'm working on right now. This is kind of the general look. Just checking my input isn't through the right thing. Cool. Yeah, so pretty basic. Going from was.sh, which is a Gatsby site. I wanted to kind of pull some of this in, make it a little more cohesive and a little more straightforward, still keeping the light and dark themes, some of the same aesthetic of like the rainbow I really like, but kind of toning it down a little bit. This is currently built in Gatsby, and when I was starting this out, I wanted to see what it would look like to build it in something else. So I'm looking into Eleventy, changing up some of the color scheme a little bit, be a little darker. You can see versus this like this lighter gray. It's a little bit darker, but pretty much everything the same. It's not a complete redesign, just kind of a refresh. The code is pretty straightforward. I've actually really enjoyed working with Eleventy. We've got, so in this folder, Eleventy is really easy to set up. You basically just create this like Eleventy JS file, which basically handles all of the processing and setting up your config for Eleventy. The things that I have in it right now, if you look, we have some extra markdown things. By default, Eleventy will parse markdown, but I wanted to have it so that it could use a couple extra features. These attributes are really nice. It's an extension on markdown. So if I open up a MD file like this one, you can see here I have this like aspect ratio style added. This is kind of a little hack with CSS that lets me do some cool stuff. Let's see, yeah, writing. Yeah, if we go to one of these, I need to fix some of the styles here. You can see, but oh good, that image is broken. Oh wow, everything is broken. This is exciting. I haven't looked at this for a little bit, so apparently I broke some stuff. So we'll go ahead and fix some of that. But basically, if we look at this responsive, where is it? Oh yeah, the markdown aspect ratio. So this adds that to that. It sets that style in there, which is pretty nice. This should figure this correctly. However, it does not seem to be working. So this should handle essentially like making the aspect ratio, which just calculates this like 100% divided by, you know, the var here. but let's see what we get with a computed value there. So it doesn't look like there's any padding. Interesting. So my guess would be that this calc is just not working correctly. Because if we set this to like 100%, yeah, so that works. So this calc just must not be calculating correctly. Yeah, and if you look in here, there's no information there. So go ahead and start digging into that a little bit. Maybe try to fix this aspect ratio code and see where we can go from there. So that's to kind of cover the way that this looks. Oh, that's way more than I needed. Let's go ahead and tree the CSS folder. Nope. Okay. Oh, I can go over that real quick. So the way that this is working, if I open up styles.eleventy.js, this is using post CSS to handle a couple of the extra features of CSS that I like. So I've got some import stuff, CSS variables, post CSS functions. For loops are really good for setting up templates and various things like that. And then CSS Nano just kind of removes some extra stuff that we don't need. So if we go to utils in this folder, you can see I have a couple just special style utils here, specifically kind of just working on converting something to EM from pixel, and then just this literally just appends pixel to it. But that lets you do some cool stuff. My vim config is very wrong. 1 second. Config, and then go ahead and update this maybe. Oh, all right, looks like it is updated. All right, well, we'll deal with that as it goes. Then there's some fancy stuff here. This is basically based on some code from IBM and the way that they handled their type scale in their design system. So you can see some information about it in this like text here. There's also, I put together this little code pen, which shows, yeah, how the type scale works. So depending on which step you pass it, that's the size of the text that you get. So in this case, you can see it gets bigger and bigger. And this is all calculated based on some special things. And it's kind of this like interesting recursive function where things get added together and do some cool little interesting steps. So that just, you can see here, yeah, it just returns a step, or which is a ternary function. If step is greater than 1, we return this floored math function times 2. Otherwise, we return the next step, or plus the next step. Otherwise, we return 12. So if it's the first step, it's just always 12. This just lets us do some really cool, like really good type spacing that looks really nice without a whole lot of work. So if I look for type scale, oh. Okay, cool. You know what? Let's just go ahead and open this in VS Code. Since vim seems to be broken, I'll jump over that. That'd be a little easier. So yeah, there we go. Some different pieces of code here. If we look at fonts, I'm using recursive. It's just a variable font. This is some fun little like Unicode hacks to load just the minimum viable English language fonts that we need. So fonts load very quickly, and then we load the rest of the glyphs as we need them. There's some really cool like performance increases that we get here because of this, where the page loads very fast with the font still. Here you can see using the colors and the for loops to just create a bunch of variables to handle colors, background rainbow, border rainbows, different borders in different directions, things like that. This is just Prism, which is used for my color styles on any code that's in it. Like if we look down here, this is my custom-made theme for Prism. Tokens just handles all of the base variables and tokens for the thing. Here you can see the functions coming in though. The big thing here is doing this type scale. We grab like the 4th step and then the EM. And if we go back to here, you can see that 4 is 18 pixels. I like my fonts to be kind of big on my personal sites. I think it looks better. It's a little easier to read. And my site's very focused on reading. So that's how the fonts all work. These are all generated from that type scale. Moving on, there's some special grid code, nothing too complicated. Have some flex things. The way that my styles are essentially set up is that I have these very specific ways of handling various styles. I kind of need to sort these together a little bit more. I might spend a little bit of time doing that. Let's see. I don't think there's been any chats. No chats. I think I might be the only one here. So maybe tonight, goals for tonight would be to sort styles into new folders based on and I can explain a little bit more about what that means. Potentially add fixed aspect ratio. Oh, not encoding. There we go. Change this to Markdown real quick. And then maybe to get post list on homepage, which is, if you look here, you can see I have a list of my current writings like this. I would just want to do the same thing on this page right here. And that's pretty much it. So we'll see how that goes, and then maybe we'll move forward from there depending on where we end up. Cool. Let's go ahead and get in. I am going to tweet about this one more time just to spread the word, if you will. Cool. Just post this tweet real quick. Cool. That is tweeted. So let's go ahead and pop out the chat real quick so I can always see that. Sweet. Yeah, so let's go ahead and go back to that post and see what's going on with the images. This is because the image isn't in my assets folder. yeah, it's looking for radar in here, which doesn't exist. But that's all right. We can fix that. Switch up my music a little bit here. Neat. All right. So cool. Let's go ahead and look at this aspect ratio thing first. Not sure what's going on here. I think it's having an issue handling this, and I don't know why. So there's the post. Let's go ahead and pull this up. I don't know where that went. Okay. Yeah, so we have this. Where is it? The aspect ratio code is right here. I wonder if it's just needs to be backspaced there, actually. I think this is meant to work on the image. Okay, that helped. Well, no, it didn't. That's not right. So the image should be full width there. And that doesn't seem to be working. So, okay, so we're getting full width. We're just not getting the height. Which makes me, so this just must not be calculating correctly. So what's going on with that calculation? First things first, does this work in Chrome? It's always the question. Okay, it does not work in Chrome, which means this is an actual thing. It's not just Firefox being a little weird. Okay, so the aspect ratio is 16 by 9. So if I just change this to be 16 divided by 9, does that work? No, it does not. Interesting. Okay. So okay, so seems like it's not rounding correctly there. Which is probably this problem. Yeah, so that looks like 16 by 9. Yeah, it should be 56.25% on the bottom. So there. CSS variable. Let's see what happens. What happens if we just do the variable here? Do we get any? Okay, so that obviously doesn't work, but yeah, so it's 16 by 9. So if I do times 1 pixel, we should get 16 divided by 9 as a computed thing, which seems to be, okay, yeah, so that worked. If we see here now, we can see just a little bit of it. So that's, you know, a calculated property, which is showing up, which is nice. If I do it times like 10, it should be bigger, and it shouldn't just be 10 pixels, hopefully. Yeah, maybe it is 10 pixels. Oh shoot, maybe I was looking at the wrong thing. Yeah, I was. Okay, so that's why. So this should just be 100% divided by that variable. And what do we get then for this before element? Padding bottom, it's getting converted into pixels. Why? I believe I got this from a post, maybe. Let's go inspect. Hi, Pixie. I just realized that this was here. I should turn off Streamlabs symbol stuff. Let's see. There we go. It's turned off now. Go for it. Post all the symbols you want. So what are we doing here? Oh yeah, this is what I was looking at. Let's see. Why? Maybe it, I mean, that would make sense. Well, I don't know why I'm dividing there. Maybe that's just the issue. Maybe I just changed that to a division on accident. Oh, well, that's better. It's inverted, I think. It might just be order of operations. Let's times 100%. See what happens. That probably isn't going to matter, but nope. All right, why are you so large? It thinks that it should be 1400 pixels. Aspect ratio 16:9. All right, let's just dig in here and see what we get. Oh yeah, this is essentially what I was doing. It should be display blocked already. Yeah. Okay. Not sure why this isn't working. It should be working. The aspect ratio, it's on the outer box. There shouldn't be anything fancy about how we set it. That looks right. It is 16:9. Maybe there's something weird about the width of something here and how it's set. Rules. Yeah, that doesn't matter. How weird. This definitely used to work. Aspect ratio. Oh, that's it. This has to be something to do with the way that browsers are calculating this, because when you hard code it, it works just fine. It works exactly like you would think it would work. I don't know. It's very strange. Maybe it needs a nested calc. Maybe if we calc this, is that gonna work? Nope. removes the other calc, huh? It's interesting. All right, well, maybe for now we'll just leave it as 16 by 9. No idea what's wrong with that. Yeah, I guess we'll just make this have a 16 by 9 aspect ratio for now, so that that doesn't look terrible. I don't know that I'm going to actually need any other aspect ratios, but it would be nice to have if I do. So regardless, that looks pretty good now. Pretty happy with that. This image is still broken. Let me just get rid of that because I don't actually need a cover image on this. Cool. So that looks pretty good, I think. What's up with this margin here? Let's look at the type scale real quick and see. Well, I guess it's going to be in generic. I didn't unset the margin on H1s, or on my H's in general. There we go. Feel pretty good about that. So that looks like we need a little bit of margin on that H2 now. So we can go ahead and jump into the post. This is the liquid post. One thing we need to do, liquid if so liquid is just the templating language that I'm using here. Okay, pretty simple. We just want percent if that, I think. Percent. We want it if it does not equal empty string. And then here we just want percent end if. I should keep that image from being created, like having an empty image in there. Should be good. And then here, I think we just want spacing. I don't remember how my spacing stuff is. I've not worked on this in a very long time. Yeah, so for direction, we do that. So it's spacing, let's do 2, top. Tweak that a little bit. See, spacing is also based in a scale function, which does a little bit of math to figure out like what the spacing on this should be. Why didn't the spacing work? Oh, because it's not spacing, it's margin. There we go. That might be a lot. That is a lot. Let's do 2. See how that looks. Cool. All right. So that's starting to get there. Runtime. Cool. I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. I do need to probably so the other thing we can do, we need to edit the markdown a little bit. This is a neat little trick that I learned from Andy Bell's post on CSS resets. But if you do this like owl operator, margin top, we can do like spacing 2. That should work. Oh, we need a and that. And this needs to be EM so that it has units. Okay, so that should work. Cool. Now those are all spaced nicely without a lot of work. So we don't have to specifically tell it how to space all these out. We just give it this nice little, you know, I think he called this the lobotomized owl operator, because it looks like an owl face. but this just says anything within Markdown that has a sibling, we should give a margin top. So this last, I guess it would actually need to be a margin bottom. I did that wrong. Because otherwise we get a margin up at the top that we don't want here. So there's no margin between this and this now. If we look at that, we can confirm that that's true. This paragraph here, yeah, does not have a margin on it, but the next paragraph does have a margin on it. Oop, I said that backwards, I think. Yeah, this one does have a bottom margin, I think. I don't even know where that is. Clearly, it is a good day for programming for me. Oh, because this is an image, this gets special margins set. I forgot. We can actually go ahead and remove that since we know that things are going to be spaced within here. We don't have to worry about that anymore. So we can remove this spacing prompt here. And that should remove that. And now we get margin underneath this from it being, what have I done here? A bunch of broken stuff, it looks like. I need an and here, although I actually don't need that anymore because we already have that spacing with the other thing. Okay, so all of that, now we should have this paragraph. It doesn't currently have spacing on it. I'm not sure why. Oh, I apparently already have that in there anyway, so we don't actually need this. I don't think. Oh, I see. Yeah, so it was margin top. So that works. That should space things out now. Except that it doesn't get it on H2, so why not? Oh, because that comes after that. So main, part of the issue here, that's in reset, so it's being reset by the generic. Interesting. H5, H6 in here. Maybe that's where the problem's coming in. I'm not sure what size H's those were, but that should. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good, I think. So we can actually, from generic, we can remove the margin 0 that we put in here, because now everything's handling its margins correctly. So yeah, we got a few things on here. So it looks like next thing, okay, I gotta close some tabs here. Okay, next thing is to take, so we'll just say that that's done, and then maybe this post list on homepage, which I think is here. Yeah, that's this page here. We just want under recent writings, there should already be writing.html. Yeah, so for post in collection. So we can copy this for loop. This is not how we're going to want it to look, I don't think. But for now, yeah, there we go. So now there's some information in there. So I think with this, though, we just want this to be styled a little differently. Maybe do the time afterwards with the link here. And that should be good. I don't think we need the description necessarily, but we do need to wrap this in a UL. Let's see. Cool, yeah, so that looks pretty good, I think. I don't think we need this here. And we don't need this O writing class. Let's see what that looks like. Cool, yeah, I'm pretty cool with that. Let's add a space between those so we can see that. And that looks pretty good, I think, for now. Cool. So I think that's looking pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Might add some more information. I need to get all the rest of my posts on here. That's pretty easy to set up now that I have this. The other thing I was going to do was kind of break down some of the styles into folders. So I have this thing that I call SCSS. I really should write about. There's a I have an example of this somewhere. Where is it? This README. Not sure how built out this is though. Dang it. It doesn't look like I have it there. I actually think it's in. I have an issue open from an old job in our style guide that kind of talks about this a little bit. So SCCSS is my little like pithy naming convention for how I like to write CSS at a good scale. So it just kind of is pronounced like success. It's based on Smoothie. Smoothie is similar with like some very similar concepts, but this breaks it down just a little bit more into something I think is pretty usable. First and foremost, you have tokens in our project. Tokens are in token.css. So this is just all of the tokens that we have. These are set as CSS variables. This could also be a file full of SCSS variables. You could write them in YAML. You could build them that way. You can kind of build them from, code of some kind, or you can just set them as variables the way that I have here. Since this is a personal site, I'm just using this one massive file for that. So we'll probably leave this at the base level. Then when you get into the rest of the stuff, it starts to break down into a little bit of a deeper framework. So there's these ats, which is fun because in Sass, this is all of your things that start with at, which is mixins, includes, and imports. You can also include placeholders, but they should really be very careful and follow a single responsibility principle. So in this situation, we have those things like, well, that's not one of them. So font face stuff kind of falls into there. This is like settings for your application, as well as maybe, I don't know that there actually is very much else right now in this, but basically these are anything that don't output CSS, but that are used in other places in your Sass or CSS files. So in this situation, that would be things like, well, I guess technically that's like my utils.js file. I've written similar functions like these in Sass functions, and then those are exported from that file, and that kind of makes sense with what the ats are. Then the next thing are generics. Generics are basically just anything. I currently have generic.css, but that's like your reset, your stuff that basically doesn't operate on classes. It just operates on base HTML element styles. So in this situation, so to give an example, what I want to do here is I want to take this and I want to put it into generic just as a folder. And then we're going to set generic / reset and generic / and I want to rename this to HTML settings or something like that. And so we are going to move this into there. And we're going to move reset into there if I can find it. There it is. And then we're going to rename this to HTML. And then there's probably, yeah, so like there's a few things in here that are not HTML only. So we want to move some of these out, maybe kind of redefine some of them. Sometimes, depending, I keep things that are very generic class names in here. Things like .container or .content, or like even responsive images. Things that could almost be CSS or HTML tags. You know, you could almost imagine writing like image, like responsive equals true. And actually, that might be a good way to do this. So instead of, let's find .image. I don't know where I'll use responsive image. Doesn't look like anywhere. Oh, well, actually. Image responsive, yeah. So what we could do instead that would keep this in the generic feel would be to do some sort of class star equals, star equals response. Well, I can't ever remember how this works. CSS select by data attribute. Yeah, so we can just do like data responsive. And that gives us the ability to then just have this as a thing. And we can do, instead of that, we just put that in there. And this is the logo. So the way we'll know this worked is if right now, we'll save that. We got a responsive class. Looks like it's still there, maybe. There we go. Class image responsive. Oh no, this just doesn't, yeah, okay. So then if we go in here and change this to data responsive, that should have that selector on it now somewhere. Oh, we're not on the right element. Let's back that element. Yeah, so there it is, data responsive, this object fit cover. That basically is just a way to do good responsive images on mobile. Let's see. Ooh, that has a giant image too. But that seems to have worked. You can see that like scales down correctly, which is good. That's what we want. I need to remove that image though, because that image is clearly broken. So that gets us a little closer there. We could do the same for these, though I think both of these kind of can just live in a separate place. It might make sense to do no decoration though, but probably not. So we'll save these for utilities, which is another type of folder. Oh, I didn't get everything there, did I? There we go. So now this is just pure HTML objects, no classes, nothing like that. and generics is the way it should work. The next thing is objects. Objects are anything that pops up around your application. Things like media objects or flag objects. These you can see in various places around the web. Bootstrap has some good examples of a media object. It's like a thing with an image and then some heading. You see these, this is everything from like a Twitter post to a Facebook post to a comment on a blog. Like, these are really common for that kind of thing, or for a product review, or a header for a product, things like that, where you just get like this various whatever kind of media, some kind of like descriptive heading and some kind of descriptive text. This can be useful. The other thing would be like a flag object. It's very, very similar. In this case, it's some piece of content, image with content next to it. And sometimes it is vertically centered. These are just examples of things that fall into the object category. For me, I believe one that I have is writing. Yeah, so O/writing. Which is currently in spacing, which doesn't make any sense. I clearly just dropped it into a spot. So what we're going to do instead is go ahead and cut that out. And where that is used, that is an object used for my writing page. This probably needs to be renamed a little bit. It's not actually for just writing. That's this like post-esque object, right? Of like a title, a description, and then a go-to link. In which means we need a objects folder. This should also be generics. Import objects /post CSS. So I think that's what I'll call this. I think that makes sense. It's a post object. So we need post CSS, if I can write. There we go. It's just this display grid with a link and an H1 and some information there. So writing. Let's go ahead and find that and change that. That should be broken. No, I didn't change it here. Post. Yeah. So that's broken now. What we now need to do is go into here and do post. And that, yeah, there we go. So that worked. Although this is kind of weird. The height on this is very strange to me. Might need to tweak that a little bit. Align. Flex end maybe? I'm not sure. Oh, I guess this isn't flexed, but oh, that worked. Okay, cool. So yeah, that looks a little better, I think. And then that should just put it always at the bottom, even when it's longer. Yeah, that looks pretty good, except for that spacing, which just means we need maybe just some margin on the top and bottom there. Should fix that. Nope, that doesn't fix it. 20 pixels. So maybe we just do like 120 here. How's that look? There we go. So that scales pretty well. Everything goes well when it breaks to the next breakpoint. So we have that object now. That works. Now, I don't have many other objects in this, but they could really like expand depending on what you were doing. You might do like a grid. I might move my grid into that actually at some point. I just haven't done it yet. Typically these correspond, was a good thing that I wrote in here, was about like these typically correspond to some kind of component in like a React architecture or something like that, where you may not actually have to work with the media objects themselves. You would just provide like values to the component and these would describe those. but not everything that is a component needs to be described by objects, just things that are like reusable and reused as general like look and feel type things. So so utilities are prefixed with a U. They're basically things that just overwrite other styles, or anything that kind of follows this like single responsibility principle. They should really only do one thing. Sometimes they're use like important tags. Sometimes they're like little hacks that you need, various things like that. I don't think I have a current utilities file, but utilities, this would be a good place for like general.css that has that content that I had earlier, like content, max width, container, and no decoration. And then we would just do at import utilities slash general.css. And that would get imported, and that should fix this link up here because I had it highlighting on it a minute ago. Cool. So those are utilities. There's the ones that we haven't gotten to yet. Next thing would be finally components. This is more for like an actual application where you're building things that have some kind of components. These can be formatted however. Back when I worked at Lessonly, we used this like button architecture, or not button, like this like what's it called, ITCSS or suit CSS to do that. And that's just how we liked to write our things. That's the like the dash inactive, those kinds of things. And as an example, you might see something like this when you put everything together. So this is pulled from a token file. You know, it has an include in it, which is then like this button has a default. It has inactive states, all these other states pulled with different more includes, more colors, things like that, and just kind of working its way up. So I don't really have components so much in this. However, I do have things like Prism and Markdown, which are kind of vaguely components. So I'm going to go ahead and do at import components. Those are things that are, you know, based on a specific tag that they have in CSS, should be styled that way, a specific way. So we want markdown.css and at import components / prism.css, and then that should be those. New folder, components, we move Prism into there, and Markdown into there. That gives us our component side of things. I'm going to split these out just a little bit. Oh, and we also need, so import at fonts.css. So if I remove this now, that will show you, or that'll handle the settings of the fonts. So I just need to add a new file, and then not a file. Come on, there we go. New folder, move, where did it go? There, fonts into there. Now, I've been thinking about this a little bit, and with some of the new ways that I've been doing some of this stuff with like the type scale and various like font declarations and things like that, font could live in its own utility. Type is basically a utility. These are all things that have very specific overrides for things. So I think that makes sense to move into the utilities folder, because because those are general type utilities. These. And these should all be in order of specificity, which is the other nice thing. So, you know, as you're going, ats don't actually generate any CSS, or they shouldn't technically. Fonts is like one exception to that usually. Generics are your highest level of specificity. They're just very basic, like HTML elements. Objects are more specific, but very layout based and shouldn't have to deal with overrides very often. Utilities are very specific, usually down to like a single element, single property. But then components, you generally don't want to be overwritten. Utilities can overwrite components, so sometimes you might move like one of these down. You might move utilities down a little bit to that order. I might do that here just to make that, because utilities typically do override all of the other things because they're like the most specific thing. Okay, so spacing I think is also a utils thing, because it generates a bunch of classes for generating spaces in the content. So I think we're going to go ahead and do that in utilities as well. There might be a third, or not a third, but another category here that I haven't like considered yet, that is some kind of like atoms, like in the atomic design concept. That's kind of what utilities are. They might make more sense to be considered atoms, depending on what you're using, because the other option is utilities also can specify things that are like a clear fix hack or something like that, which are very, very specific and like CSS specificity specific, and that might just make sense, but I don't know. I'm gonna leave it like this for now. So color is also the same way as those other ones. It generates a bunch of classes that are used to set colors. I kind of don't like that everything's ending up in utilities. It should be pretty light. I actually think what I was just saying, now that I'm looking at these and thinking, I am going to rename these to atoms, which just means I need to come over here and rename this folder to atoms. I bet the whole site is broken right now. Oh, shockingly, it's not. Let's go ahead and move colors into atoms. Let's move spacing into atoms. Grid, also atoms, because that is just grid-based classes to generate grids from. Tokens, like I said, that can just live where it is. Size, this is all like width elements, so we'll also move that into atoms. This is a very atomic system that I've built out, which I think makes sense. There we go. Go ahead and drop that into there. I think everything kind of just falls into there. And then finally, it's just this thing, just the main file that lives in here. Yeah, size also went in there. This aspect ratio and color toggle I need to rename. These are essentially components. So you can see a really good indicator that you have a component is when you have something that is defined by a single class, but then has a lot of underlying elements to it. So this is an aspect ratio component. So I want to rename this. I was trying to follow some of the more like suit CSS styles originally, but I don't actually like that. So I want to go aspect ratio like that. We're going to go ahead and move that into components. Color toggle is the same way. It's needed to, it has some really specific styles, that's this thing here. It has to do some really specific stuff to handle covering up the sun or the moon, depending on which direction it's going. I think I want to rename this from color switch like that to color dash switch, just to be more consistent. That would also mean we rename this color dash switch and find anywhere that we have color switch and switch. Do that, and then in here, that should work. So that just was a rename of all those things. This is going to be aspect ratio components / aspect ratio. And then we do that. Color toggle. All right. So this should all work now. Nothing should be broken. Oh, everything's broken. Oops. Color switch. Why are we broken? Ooh, I bet this didn't update. I think I probably need to kill the Eleventy server. Oh, actually, I know what the problem is. Or at least part of the problem. We renamed this to color switch, but in main CSS, this is still color toggle. So switch. Let's see if that works. All right. Dang it. What is broken? Dark mode. Color switch. Click. Select element. Ah, I didn't change the button class apparently. Could have sworn that that's what I just did, isn't it? Yeah. Color switch. Just needs resave maybe. I don't know what's happening here. Color switch. Very weird. Maybe we just need to like hard reload. And I just can't find color switch because it's erroring. Color switch.css. Oh wait. Mistakes were made. There we go. I bet that fixes it. There we go. So that works. So yeah, that's basically SCCSS or success. These are all very broken down. I'm going to write up a post about this at some point and then link to it from here. But for now, I think I'm going to go ahead and call it on the stream. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out. I don't know how many people were actually here. I don't think very many, but I stream every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Check back. One of these streams coming up soon. I'm going to be doing some pair programming with a friend of mine on a side project that he and I are working on. And we're going to just kind of work on that and build some stuff out. And I think it'll be really cool. I've never seen a stream with pair programming before. And I think pairing is really important and a really good way to work with other developers. So I'm excited to kind of show that off. And yeah, so check back, subscribe, or follow, either one. I am working on getting Twitch affiliate, and then hopefully someday partner, and slowly just working towards more content and more streams. I really, really have been enjoying streaming. So check back every Wednesday. There's a very good chance I'll start doing more streams as well. If I do, they'll probably be either Fridays or Saturdays. But I don't have any plans for that yet too much. Until next time, I hope you all have a great evening and a great rest of your week. And I will catch you all later.